Good afternoon, participants. This is your host Shivam from the Economic Times, welcoming you all to today's live webinar on how patients can benefit from an agile, responsive, and tech enabled pharma supply chain. Allow me to introduce the speaker of this webinar, Dr. Sanjeet Singh Lamba, Managing Director, EISAI Pharmaceuticals. With more than 30 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry, Dr. Lamba has made a huge contribution in treating diseases such as filariasis and multiple sclerosis. And he has also helped to implement successful patient support programs for oncology drugs in India. Welcome, Dr. Lamba. In this webinar, he will share his insightful knowledge on the best practices that can be adopted to build a robust pharma supply chain. There will be a Q&A round after the presentation is over. However, please feel free to post your questions anytime during the webinar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone joining this webinar today. As was just explained, my name is Sanjeet Lamba. I had a Japanese pharmaceutical company called Eisai, based in Tokyo, and we have a large center in India for research and manufacturing operations. And I look after the overall organization as a managing director. I would really look at a few areas. Supply chain in pharmaceutical industry is a very broad topic, but specifically looking at some areas, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities today. I would say that if you really look at the objectives for this webinar today, we are looking at what is the current state of pharma supply chain today, what are the challenges, and how can companies use supply chain to gain a competitive advantage, not only in India, but also globally. So we are looking at what is the growth of pharma industry overall. The pharmaceutical industry, specifically, we look at physical capacity, people, and organization capacity. These are the areas where Indian pharmaceutical industry is focusing on. Today, we are expecting to grow around 1.8 times by next year. With the current size of 30 billion, probably we will grow to a level of 50 to 55 billion dollars as far as the Indian pharmaceutical industry is concerned. The API market is expected to grow to a level of 11 billion, and biosimilars, which is a new area, is around a level of 0.9 billion, which is today. For that, a significant capacity is needed to ensure that we have a good utilization of our capacity and can meet the demands, which is going to grow 1.5 times over the next couple of years. So new facilities and lines are needed to cater to this additional demand, specifically biotechnology, biopharmaceutical based products, including also vaccines. On the other side, we look at cold chain and packaging. They must expand. Packaging specifically should expand to double to 2.5 to 3.5 billion by the next year by increasing its existing capacity and also base of vendors and partners. We need more storage facilities and robust cold chains, especially in the northern part of India and also to the eastern part of India to increase our network for growth. For that, a very important aspect in supply chain is people and organization capacity. So overall, if you look at the pharmaceutical manpower, it needs to be increased to 1.5 to 1.6 million by next year, especially in the core function areas of quality, manufacturing, assurance, compliance management, research and development, and specifically recently the training, which is becoming a more and more important for this industry. The skills and training which require attention are both manufacturing and quality. So we need to really look at how do we create upskilling in this ratio of quality personnel to manufacturing from 1:7 to 1:4 for ensuring that there is a good oversight of quality operations on manufacturing. Globally, many organizations are focusing on the training, and I think we need to do a lot of work on ensuring that we not only provide training, but ensure that the training is really effective at the grassroots level. Another area which needs focus is the pharmacovigilance and the clinical trials, where we are giving a lot of importance, and also government is doing a lot to ensure to improve this skill which is required in these two specifically areas which are emerging areas in the India. So when you look at process capabilities, one of the areas which is to ensure that we create new different types of drugs formulations. We create more capacities for working on peptides, biosimilars, and more innovative drugs, and also specific areas like steroids. And also there is a heavy reliance today on imports as far as the APIs are concerned. We need to create a lot of capacity internally here and a lot of collaboration between the government, academia, and the industry to ensure that we have a good facilities available. We need to not only create facilities, we need to ensure there's a good automation available in these areas, especially at the API stage, because that's where we see there are a lot of potential to increase not only the capacity, but also the delivery and also the cost advantage, because India has lost a cost advantage as far as APIs are concerned in the last few years because of heavy reliance on countries like China. And also a robust technology transfer process is required to ensure that we don't have failures, we have rugged processes, and we don't create any waste in the system. Another area which is important is our supply chain level of maturity at the level of wholesalers, clearing and forwarding agents. They need to create an excellence in these areas. And also, as far as the pharmaceutical manufacturing is concerned, manufacturing quality and compliances, they must be enhanced across the value chain till the product reaches the patient. And that's where our key objective is, to ensure the patient gets the right quality of a product at the right time. When you look at three areas which we are looking at to improve as far as pharmaceutical supply chain is concerned is the customer service, our inventory levels, and also the supply chain cost, because we need to have a good balance in these areas, and these are the key indicators of a good agile pharmaceutical supply chain. If you really look at the kind of a data which today is available, there was a large work which was done by OPPI along with the Indian Pharmaceutical Association and OPPI together to create a data about what is happening in the pharmaceutical industry in India as far as supply chain is concerned. So when you really look at the first parameter, the first indicator of customer service level, on an average of pharma in India, we are at the customer responsiveness level of 88.3%, whereas the best in pharma in India is operating at a 95%. Overall, if you look at the global best in class is operating at 99.5, and a nearest benchmark for us is FMCG industry, which is still also operating at a 98%. So there's a large gap between the pharma average and the best in class pharma India, and that is a gap which we are looking at. How do we really make sure we have collaboration at many levels to ensure that this customer service level gap is bridged? The second important areas as far as supply chain is concerned is the inventory levels. On an average, pharmaceutical industry is operating at inventory level of 231 days. And when we compare it with the best-in-class pharma, which is at 133, and overall best-in-class pharma global, which is operating at around 110, 120 days. But when you really look at the best-in-class FMCG industry, they are operating at 50 to 55 days, an average of 53. And similar level, you will see even lower levels in the electronic industry. So IT, hardware, and FMCG are really benchmarks. And today, India pharmaceutical industry is at that crossroads that we need to really create solutions in these areas to control the inventory level, because this inventory level, because of high complexity in the supply chain in India, is a large waste which is sitting in the system without giving any return on the investments. Overall, if you look at, this is the kind of indicator which gives us in overall what is the supply chain total cost. And pharma average overall is around 25%, whereas best-in-class pharma is operating at 18%, globally at 10%. And same is the case with the FMCG, best-in-class global is operating at 10%. And that's the kind of a work which we need to do, that we need to bring down this supply chain cost. When we compare at various levels in supply chain management, we see various processes like demand planning, supply planning, information transparency, the structure of organization, and what are the key performance indicators or a measurement in these areas? We see again a gap between what is the average of a pharma in India versus best in class and versus best in class FMCG industry. And you see we are an industry which is operating between stage one and stage two most of the times, whereas overall, if you look at the best in class FMCG, mostly is operating between stage three and stage four. So that's the kind of gap which we have in when you say our use of forecasting tools and our systems. We create significant wastages and shortages in the system. That is the reason you have seen that our deliveries are around 88% right first time, and otherwise we are still struggling in these areas. From the supply chain planning point of view, there is a low usage of optimization models, and people are not using, a lot of companies are not using software to ensure that our supply chain tools help us in optimizing our supply and the production plans. Overall, if you really look at from the information point of view, we work in a system where we still have a lack of process or a system to share information with our suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, retailers as a full value chain. But generally we focus on our own system, whether it is our manufacturing or our own warehouses. So also when you look at the information availability across on the product, whether it is recalls or lost product, breakages, contamination issues, availability at various levels, the transparency is low. And there is no single view on the demand and supply scenario to ensure we have a quick replanning in case something goes wrong. Again, from organization structure point of view, when you look at in the earlier part of the supply chain, we have absence of dedicated data integrity or a quality champions across the functions in the industry. There are some companies, best in class pharma in India, they have adopted this model and they are very successful in doing that, whether it is India Pharma or it's they're supplying to the global partners across the supply chain as far as exports are concerned. But there is a need for more cross-functional collaboration to handle especially the quality issues, the investigations, the complaints, similarly pharmacovigilance areas. If you look at the measurement, the indicators, we have areas where there's a lack of harmonized measurement system in performance. So if you really look at relative performance of sites uh, is 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 what we are doing. We don't have a clear global metrics or performance quality metrics in whole of a pharma today. Only best in class pharma in India or a best in class global is following that. So we really need to create those defined quality metrics, which is required by stringent regulatory agencies. And I think that's the key thing which we all have to catch up to give us very clear cut indicators. Are we in control or we are going out of control within the manufacturing or out of the manufacturing industry into the distribution chains, into the retail areas. When you look at the supply chain challenges in the pharmaceutical industry here in India, there are four major focus areas, I would say. First one, quality and regulatory issues, which is around 50%. So half of the issues are related to the technical aspects, the regulatory parts, the quality manufacturing areas, and other areas are product proliferation, supply chain fragmentation, which is complex, and also the infrastructure gaps at different parts of the supply chain. So when you look at the quality and the regulatory issues, our issues start right at the procurement stage. So we need to have a system to ensure that we have materials available, they are raw materials or APIs or bulk drugs of right quality available to us before we start manufacturing of a finished product. So we don't need to have batch failures or production delays or lack of availability of resources across the plant. So basically the key area is right procurement planning, right procurement implementation. Another part is manufacturing. You see there is a gap between what is expected from the global regulatory compliance point of view and actual compliance, and there are issues and which are leading to the quality issues, and also a large unused capacity is available in our network, which is a waste, and that's what we need to tap across the value chain to ensure that we create excellence. The third area is logistics. When we supply a product from our manufacturing and warehouses, there are many issues like complaints, rejects, product failures, which have a direct impact on the storage, handling, and also the cost of rejection. So the cost of this wastage is huge, and that's why you see a gap between best-in-class pharma, which is around 18% of the cost of supply chain, versus the average of 25%. This is where we have the issues, and this is the area where we need to bridge the gap. A large focus needs to be created on ensuring that we have a good product development and research and development labs, specifically for markets which are export markets. So there's a lack of quality control in R&D, which has sometimes led to failures in the trial batches, causing delays in the technology transfer to manufacturing. And you see a number of issues where a lot of wastage happens in this area, and this requires also a lot of planning to ensure we have a right first time. Again, from India perspective, I think pricing creates large impact. If you see from the drug price control order, we are required to ensure that the stock what is recalled for change in the pricing, it is brought back to our distribution system or to the manufacturing for relabeling in case the price changes, which results in a lot of wastage and loss of shelf life. Again, we create a lot of pressure here, and recently you've seen number of drugs have come under price control, and this complexity is also increasing. When you look at the another factor of product proliferation, we have a changing consumer demographics. There are new emerging therapeutic segments like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and the chronic pain. And this is the reason that the new facilities are getting created, new lines are getting created, new technologies are put in place to support production. And this is also the reason that number of SKUs or the stock keeping units in the industry is increasing beyond which it can control. So we have a network of around 12,000 organizations vying with each other for various SKUs, and the competition is growing up. So because of this competition, if you see, there are multiple products in the market with similar specifications and bioequivalence and also pricing points. This also creates a lot of complexity in the system. And if you see the industry per se, there is a large gap between what is the global regulatory requirement and what are the requirements as far as India is concerned. Of course, in the recent times, there's been a lot of discussions with the government to ensure that we increase our level to at least a World Health Organization recommended, WHO recommended GMP practices, which India is going to adopt very soon, and that's going to bridge some gap into the complexity. But still, the gap would remain between the stringent regulatory agencies of Japan, US, and Europe versus what we have in the emerging markets, including India. And the third area is the supply chain fragmentation. We spoke about various therapy areas which are developing, and then because of our large materials which we are using, there are multiple vendors with various requirements. There are lack of proximity to the manufacturer. There are different degrees of quality standards which are available, and then each company uses a different standard for their own, so less of a harmonization. This is increasing complexity. Overall, if you look at the production schedules are becoming common because of poor supply service levels and further affecting the ability of the supply chain to make and deliver on time. And this delivery on time is a clear indicator of what is the health of our supply chains. When you look at 88.3 versus 98.5 or 99.5, that's the kind of a gap because of this complexity. And overall, we have a number of manufacturing facilities at multiple networks. That also increases the supply chain costs. Every company would have different manufacturing facilities. Large companies in India have more facilities, 8 to 10 manufacturing plants with a different kind of a specialization. Some cater to different markets with different plants, and this is another area which we need to look at because this creates a lot of compliance issues as far as industry is concerned. We have decentralized R&D centers. There we use multiple in-house centers, third-party CROs, CMOs for creating different technologies. And then when we create this, it also creates a lot of complexities, increasing cost, and finally reducing the plant utilization. If we are operating at a low plant utilization, our cost of manufacturing, our cost of supply chain is increasing. That's what you see. On average, some cost of 25% is there, but you will find companies with a large supply chain cost of 40%, because it's becoming difficult to operate with that complexity levels. Also, a very complex and unequipped distribution network. We have third-party cold chain logistic providers. They don't have adequate capacity and temperature control systems to support what is the requirement for today's drug shortages and handling requirements. Biopharmaceuticals, biotechnology-based products, monoclonal antibodies, vaccines, they are increasing, and that's increasing the load on this cold chain partners and the logistic partners. So companies deal with number of distributors, which creates a lack of visibility and unreliable forecasting. And that also increases our complexity and also suboptimal inventory, and affects the service levels, which we just saw in the beginning. And the last area is the infrastructure gaps. So we will find infrastructure gaps in whether it is logistics, storage, or the power supply in different parts of India. We see from the transportation point of view, less than 5% of the roads are national highways, and they handle more than 1/3 of the traffic. We need to rely also on large other rail network, water pathways, which are untapped, and that's an area which is going to be a focus in time to come. Similarly, air network today is expensive, and that is the reason it is underutilized. But we need to really look at how do we really optimize our supply chain for products which require a different level of security and a different level of control. So a lack of a robust cold chain network represents today a large gap in pharma infrastructure today. For example, those products which are vaccines and also, as I said, biopharmaceuticals or biotechnology-based products. In general, when you look at the pharmaceutical supply chain, as I said, is complex because right from raw materials, packaging material suppliers, with companies managing more than 15,000 raw materials and packaging components, it comes to manufacturers and also R&D labs. More than 10,000, 12,000 facilities are clustered around different parts of India, including special economic zones in 5-6 states. We have central warehouses. We have also export agents, and they go to a different level. There are different level of destinations, so approximately 200 destinations on average. And the product then moves to clearing and forwarding agents, goes to distributors, stockists, semi-wholesalers, retailers, consumers, or hospitals, and as the case may be. So this supply chain is very complex as compared to when you look at FMCG, where the levels of efficiency are higher, or electronic industry, where it is still higher. How can we reduce the supply chain complexity, and we can unlock the kind of benefits which we are aspiring from? So we need to really look at right from the beginning, right from research and development, to ensure that we have a shorter marketing authorization, approval times, we have control on the process for new drugs, and faster time to market kind of situations. We need to work together with the government. How do we ensure we have a kind of maturity level where we get faster approvals? We need to have more focus on process improvements so that we get product right first time. We don't get failures, because failures is leading to large complexity in the system. As you know, there are newer products are getting lesser and lesser. We need to work on the new kind of products, new technology transfers, and make sure that we have a cost which are remaining in control. From procurement perspective, we need to have improved supplier abilities. They need to be validated to ensure that they supply right first time, whether it is raw materials or intermediates or excipients, or there are API suppliers who ensure that the right quality of a product reaches the manufacturer, for that it can be converted to a tablet or a capsule or a liquid. And I think so far this complexity is increasing, but overall larger pharma or big pharma is realizing that in one facility we need to have fewer raw materials, less packaging components, more standardization of materials to ensure that this complexity is reduced. At the manufacturing level, we need to create faster line clearances, so that the changeover times are low. We need to create faster asset utilization, improved quality and compliance, using various processes, using various softwares. And there are organizations in India who have done excellent in these areas. They created operational excellence at various levels. We need to look at better yield through process improvement, and that's where it directly adds to supply chain costs. We need to improve the production frequency, shorter lead times, lesser of capex deployment, because you have a large capacity on one side available where it is not required. On the other side, we have a shortage of capacity required for very niche category of biotechnology or monoclonal antibodies kind of products. And finally, at the later part of the supply chain, we have areas like logistic and distribution where we need more agile, responsive chains to be working, better use of warehouses and trucks, better coverage of the stockist, retailers, faster to go with the market, and also ensure that our product inventories, as we saw, inventory levels are higher. We need to reduce these inventories with reduced product returns and rejects. Overall, if you look at between 1 to 2% of the whole product which is manufactured goes waste at the end of the cycle because of returns, rejects, or expiry of a product, because this product is sitting into the inventory for more than 200 days on an average in pharma. And especially we need to really look at to work on how do we ensure best customer services, because overall we saw a large gap between customer responsiveness of a best-in-class global pharma, best-in-class India pharma, and an average. So this is a large gap. And overall, if you see, we need to create a better network with enhanced revenue. We need to make sure we require good network optimization techniques, whether it is ERP systems or lab information management systems, good distribution practice systems. There's a good software available, and we need to ensure that our balance sheets are healthier and we have flexible, integrated, and responsive supply chain. So this is in crux what we are really looking at to reduce the complexity and see that we get benefit in these areas. So if we really look at from supply chain technologies which are available or not available, we need to work on enterprise software like ERP system. We need to work with supply chain partners, third-party vendors in IT systems, whether it is ERP systems for planning, for manufacturing, for procurement, or other parts of the supply chain. We need to really look at systems in our labs, lab information management systems, good document management systems, RFID systems in raw materials and finished good warehouses. We need to really look at smart packaging and data loggers to control temperatures in warehouses and also at various levels in the distribution. We need to really look at smart devices such as handhelds and robotic devices, which have started in the industry and at the different levels of maturity today. We need to really look at also mobile and cloud-based infrastructure where we have access to the data which is available so that we can take a right decision for ensuring an excellence. And over and above that, we need to really look at what capabilities we have on data analytics and data exchange, because once the data is exchanged with partners, we can take a very informed kind of decisions. Finally, if we really look at what is the role of the government in this, is better enforcement of the regulatory standards, higher levels of GMP compliance and good distribution practices, improvements in overall pharma ecosystem, and also infrastructure improvement. So let's look at the regulatory standards, whether it is improved quality standards or policies governing testing and release, or higher and stricter governance and vigilance to enforce these standards, and also a robust task force to monitor implementation. I think out of all, implementation through a very robust task force is the most important point in my opinion. And recently, both from the industry as well as the government, there's been a lot of stress on training programs and core topics like quality, best practice sharing groups, readiness for the compliance, and also we need to create an ecosystem where we create industry leaders, and also in close collaboration with these leaders and associations, the government and the industry should work hand in hand to monitor what is the progress of this supply chain. And overall, from the pharma ecosystem point of view, government really need to look at creating active pharmaceutical ingredient clusters in different parts of the country so that our reliance on imports is reduced. We need to create more focus on training. We need to create setup for excellence, whether it is sharing of best practices or a map to upgrade the quality standards. We are already working, but we need to do work more on these areas. We need to partner with the cold chain players to define distribution network requirements, and I think government needs to make a good plan and good collaboration in these areas so that the whole value chain can take a benefit of it. So the capacity needs to seamlessly cater to not only the local but also the global demand. As I said, clusters in various parts of India are required to streamline processes, streamline production, and to create an ecosystem where the large setups, the medium, the intermediate manufacturers, the raw material suppliers can exist and work together. From infrastructure point of view, we need to create systems where government gives exemptions from the custom duty for refrigeration motor vehicles, allowance for 100% FTIs in storage and warehousing, and augmentation of port handling capacity. By next year, we need around 3,200 metric tons of the whole cargo to be handled. So need to do a lot of work in construction, maintenance of ports and harbors for both imports and exports. We need to develop additional expressways, national highways to increase our rail freight. That's where which is untapped area. In conclusion, I would say that time has come that we are at the crossroads today. We have to take a decision which path we should adopt. And in times to come, most pharma companies will have different supply chains for different kind of products, as the supply chains are becoming very, very complex. We need to have a precise routes which will vary depending on the portfolios, the pipelines, the expertise, the kind of criticality of products, like I said, vaccines or oncology products, and it cannot be mixed with general products like tablets and capsules. And the supply chain is becoming more important as the medicines the industry makes get more and more complex, and the opportunities for generating value from pure product offerings, they are diminishing. So a lot needs to be done in this area, and I think this needs to be done together by the government, the industry, the associations, and I would say a general public in general. So that's what I wanted to talk about. What is supply chain? What is the complexity? What is the challenge today? And how we can tap the unutilized potential which is lying today in the industry? And what is the gap between the global pharma, India pharma, and the best-in-class FMCG companies? And how can we cater to create excellence in supply chain management? Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we'll be moving on to the Q&A round. And the first question for the Q&A round is, what are supply chain challenges in the present healthcare ecosystem in India?
So as I said, thank you very much for this question. As I said, uh, there are four major challenges which need to be tapped upon and which requires attention by the industry and the government, which requires quality, regulatory, reducing the complexity in the supply chain, reducing the segmentation of the products, and create best-in-class kind of infrastructure today that is lacking. Uh, and that is the reason you see a large gap between the best-in-class pharma, for example, 98.5 versus 88.3. And this gap is huge. If you just convert into value terms, it will be in billions. And that's where we need to work, not only to ensure that we get right quality product to the patient right in time, because that's where our mission is, that the mission is for the patients. We all are existing for the patients, and these are the challenges which we need to work on so that we can really deal with these complex areas.
Thank you so much, sir. The next question. In what ways can stakeholders collaborate to ensure smooth functioning of supply chain processes?
So there is a large collaboration required between the industry when you look at from the manufacturer point of view, and also initially the vendors and partners point of view, so that you get the right quality raw materials, We need to make the right quality products during manufacturing, collaboration with third-party organizations to not only for research or for development of new products, but also for contract manufacturing of products. Uh, Later on the later part of the supply chain with the distributors, the warehousing companies, the stockists, the retailers, and finally, uh, the patient groups, the associations, we all need to collaborate together to ensure, again, one goal, that the right quality product reaches the patient right in time. We have a high delivery ratio. The stockouts are negligible, and we don't have a situation where the patient is in need of a product and the right product is not available. So I think it's a very complex, a cross-functional team within the industry and outside the industry requires a large collaboration to ensure supply chain excellence.
Thank you so much, sir. The next question. How can pharma companies integrate technology seamlessly in the traditional model?
So there are legacy systems existing in the industry. There are some companies who have still not adopted technologies at various levels. So I would say first, during the beginning, that stage of procurement, we need to make sure that we have systems in place, we have right ERP, enterprise resource planning software in place to ensure that we have a visibility of what we need, when we need these materials, how much we need, till how long we use, or till how long we need these materials, how long we need to stock these materials in our warehouses before we can start. So it starts from there, and that is very complex, and we need to have good software in place to ensure visibility at every level. The next stage again is manufacturing. So need to have a good automation, whether it is right quality product, or we need to look at what is the defect ratio which is there in the pharmaceutical products, how the defective products are segregated from the right products. There are good automations available to ensure that we have a good detection mechanism in place. If there is a wrong or a faulty product in the system, it needs to be brought out of the supply chain, because otherwise it will reach a patient in a defective form, which can really harm the patient also. So again, manufacturing related automation is required to ensure that we get the right quality product which reaches the patient. Finally, it goes to the lab. We need to have a lab information management system. We need to have a good documentation system in place. We need to ensure that we are in compliance all the time. So to ensure that we have a compliance to the regulatory requirements, we need to really look at visibility of which are those regulations. Are we complying to them? Are there any statutory areas where we are complying to them or we are not? To ensure we are right first time. And also whether it is our testing labs, there is a large variance which happens in the industry because of improper testing and improper analysis. Sometimes we pass a product which is failing, and sometimes it may happen a product which is passing, we fail the product, and both things are wrong. A lot of automation has come in place in the labs across the industry, and a lot of solutions are available. Companies need to choose very wisely right in the beginning, to invest wisely so that they don't end up in kind of a failures later on. And then later on in the warehousing system, we need to ensure that we have good, whether it is a barcoding systems, to ensure that the right quality product is available at the right time. We can have a visibility of this product. All those rejected products are segregated. All those products which have still not been cleared, they're segregated. We have radio frequency information system, RFID tags which are available. There are many other systems available now to ensure that there is a clear segregation of a good product from the bad product, from the recalled product or rejected product to approved product. There is also a large automation available in case the temperatures across in distribution and warehousing, they are not complying to the requirements. There are detectors available, and these detectors, they automatically make a phone call or a message to smartphones to the right people to tell them that something is going wrong in this area, whether temperatures are rising, maybe fire is happening somewhere, or the temperatures are going up. They are your warehouses are being flooded with water because of rainfall there. There are different kinds of automation available. And then later part of the supply chain, again, and in the trucks itself, there are GPS monitors, there are temperature data loggers, there are pressure data loggers to ensure that for each product, there is an automation available today. We need to really look at artificial intelligence. We can look at robotics. There is a lot of work being done in best-in-class companies. We need to adopt slowly at different levels. But I think first and foremost important is in the beginning part, which is procurement, manufacturing, and quality. That's the first priority. Second priority is warehousing, distribution, retail mechanism. So I think overall, a large part of automation is available. We need to really pick and choose what is required for us.
All right, so moving on to the next question. What is the current scenario on the product expiry? I would say expiry and wastage in pharma supply chain.
Yeah, that's interesting. So at the different levels of maturity in an organization, different companies have different levels of wastages. But overall, when you look at, I know organizations where the wastage levels are 0.2%, 0.3%, it goes as high as 4%. So that's the kind of a band which is being operated as for the pharma supply chains are working on. And this gap is very, very big between 0.2 to 4%. And each 0.1% adds a lot of wastage in the system, whether it is because of a faulty product, expired product, rejected product, recalled, improper labeling, improper storage. Reasons may be many, but we need to really look at how do we bridge this gap between what is the best in class system and what we are operating today. If we can bridge this level, uh, that's where we need to work on. But I would say best in class of a pharma company operates less than 1% as far as wastage and expiry is concerned.
Much, sir. Now, in a previous question, you answered about how to integrate the technology in a industry, in the pharma companies, right? Now,
Right.
how will the small, basically SMEs which are available in the market, how will they incorporate this technology? Will it be cost effective for them? And how can the government, help the SMEs to incorporate such technologies?
So that's a very good question, and I think it's important for every industry, whether it is small or a medium or a large scale industry. This is a regulation. We are dealing with patients. We are dealing with lives of patients. So I think we cannot look at compromising any aspect of a pharmaceutical supply chain, whether it is procurement, manufacturing, in the labs, warehousing, distribution, or anywhere else. As I said, the needs are different today for a best-in-class company to an average company to a smaller company to a medium-scale enterprise. It depends. I also know companies in India, and they are very, very small companies, but they are operating at that high level of a compliance that their wastage is very low, their service levels are very high, their reach to patients are very fast. So I generally don't believe that small companies or medium-scale enterprises cannot use technology in a very cost-effective way. There are cost-effective technologies available. When a company is small, they can use small ERP systems. They don't need to invest right in the upfront as far as this capital expenditure is concerned. There are systems available in India also with cloud-based technologies are available. We can pick and choose what we need today. And as we grow, as we become more mature, as we become more complex, it's not a big or a small question. The question is how complex we are. If we are a smaller company, we have a few products, we can manage the complexities very well. Sometimes we don't need a very high-end kind of automation. We have very baseline kind of automation, which assures at least that we have a right quality and we don't have failures in the system. So to just detect that there is a failure in the system, we need an automation only till that level. The failure detection can be even manual. I will just give you one example. If somebody is manufacturing injections or parentals today, I would say 80% of the industry in India today is following a manual inspection of these ampules or vials because they are checking visually by manual systems. Whereas the best-in-class companies, they will use an automatic machines to ensure a laser-based mechanism is used to ensure that if there is a contamination, they can detect it. But if your volumes are low, your products are few, you can still do it manually. But in especially the laboratories, the quality control laboratories, we need to ensure at least that kind of an automation which ensures that we have a compliance and we assure that there's a good data integrity in place.
Thank you so much, sir. So we have a lot of questions coming in, but due to some time constraints, we're going to take the last question. And the last question for today's webinar is, how can implementation of global best business practices and GDP aid in overcoming issues of counterfeit and spurious drugs?
Yes, so that's a good question. Globally, this is a threat in the whole supply chain security perspective. When we look at, uh, there are many systems available today that there are legitimate and legal secure supply chains are implemented by the companies, and they can be done in different ways. Uh, the control on a product, the legitimate product and a counterfeit product, the differentiation really starts in the manufacturing. And there are companies who have good systems in place to ensure that they can really identify whether this product is manufactured by them or it's a counterfeit product. So the first control is in the manufacturing. Then at the packaging stage, also, there are mechanisms available at the packaging stage, whether it is barcoding, whether it's a 2D barcode, there's a QR code, and there are companies who have implemented 2D barcodes right on the tablets. They are printed on the tablet, so each tablet is can be considered that this is a safe and secure product to be administered. Uh, there are softwares available which ensure that the product goes into legitimate supply chain. You have clear-cut visibility who's buying your product. It shouldn't happen that somebody is actually using your product. They're buying it from system of distributors and they're exporting it out of the country. So government is making systems uh, and also asking companies to implement as early as possible to ensure at the tertiary stage or a secondary stage and also at the primary stage, the barcoding is implemented to ensure that there are track and trace mechanisms in place and they are available in case there is a need to check whether this is a counterfeit product or it's a legitimate product. Those can be identified using these best-in-class technologies. There are cloud-based systems available where you can just scan a product. You will come to know when the product was manufactured, what are the batch numbers, it went to which distributors, which stockist, and further down to a level of a retailer, you can pinpoint everything, whether it is going on the right track or it's going out of the track. So the best-in-class organizations today have gone much ahead than what we are doing today. They are looking at robotics, they are looking at artificial intelligence to tell and alert even the public that such and such product is moving in the global supply chain, and that's need to be controlled at some stage. So there is a lot of collaboration going at the government level, World Health Organization, including Government of India, to ensure that at the ports, at the airports, right security systems are available. And there are pharma clusters and there are pharma warehouses across in various airports in India. And a lot of work has been done to ensure that there's a good supply chain security compliance at these centers.
Thank you so much, sir. With this, we conclude today's webinar. I would like to thank Dr. Sanjeet Singh Lamba, Managing Director, Isai Pharmaceuticals, for sharing his insightful knowledge with us. Thank you everyone for joining us on the webinar today. Till we meet again, keep reading ethehealthworld.com.
Thank you very much.